Hey there, musicians. It's me, Miss M, and welcome to music class. Today we are going to do a project based on a really cool composer, and his name is John Cage. John Cage was an American-born composer, so a composer in the United States, and he lived from 1912 to 1992. So he'd be really old if he was still alive right now. He'd be over 100 years old, but he was almost in our time period, maybe like your great grandparents' age, as when John Cage kind of lived. Grandparents, great grandparents around there. So, John Cage was really well known for a few different things that he did in music that was very different than what most of Western composers were doing at that time. And he was especially well known for his aleatoric music and his prepared piano music. Aleatoric music, if you don't know what that one is chance music, essentially. It's music that there is an element left up to chance. I'm not going to say regular, but the standard music that we're used to seeing with those notes on a page, there's no chance in that. If someone reads exactly what's on the page and plays exactly what's on the page, down to the second, everything the musician is doing is known ahead of time. I can put a piece of music in front of me, and if I were to play it, and I were to play it right, it would sound pretty much exactly how the composer intended for it to sound, because it's almost scientific how detailed music can be. But in aleatoric music, that is all kind of thrown out the window, and it's up to chance. Whether that chance is they put in a section where the individual person playing gets to make up their own piece, make their own solo in the middle. If there's improvisation in the middle, then that piece is going to sound different every single time it's played, because even musicians who are solo improvising probably can't do exactly the same thing in exactly the same way every time if it's not written down. If it's just coming out of their head, true improvisation, they're probably not going to be able to replicate that exactly. And you could hand the piece to me to play it, and I would play it one way, and you could hand it to another flute player, and most of it would sound the same, but that part might sound completely different. And the composer has no control. They have left it up to the performer to make their own decisions, and that's a chance aspect. Other examples of chance music are if you're the composer creating out of chance, you might be rolling dice, and if it lands on a 6, you're going to use the note F, or you're going to have them play this pattern. And every time you roll a 6, it's going to be that pattern. And every time it's a 5, it's a different pattern. And suddenly you've got this piece of music that was all up to the roll of a dice, not anything in your brain. You probably came up with the patterns or the notes or the rhythms, but the chance aspect, the rolling of a piece of a dice, actually was telling you how the composition should sound and was actually doing the majority of the composing. That's aleatoric music. And prepared piano, the other thing he was really well known for is when you take a normal grand piano, if you've ever got the chance to look inside one, they're very, very cool. And you see those black and white keys, but if you open up inside a piano, all of those keys push a little hammer. And that hammer, when you hit the key, the hammer hits a string, and the string vibrates when it gets hit. So you push the key, the lever pushes the string down, and then it vibrates. And that's what creates the sound. So in prepared piano, sometimes John Cage would put things in between the strings So when they vibrated, or if you hit the C key, you'd hear some jingle bells in there because he put bells between the strings instead of just the normal piano sounds. Or maybe he'd put something on the strings to dampen them, like maybe put a rag on a couple different strings. That way they couldn't, instead of vibrating at this speed and getting this note, it might vibrate at this speed because it's really heavy from that rag. So you're going to get a much different note, a much different pitch. And John Cage was really well known for creating compositions with those prepared pianos where he'd go in ahead of time and put all kinds of stuff inside the piano that, for the record, in general, if you don't know what you're doing, should not be there. So don't go home and start sticking your teddy bears in the back of a piano if you have one. Please. And do not say I told you to do that. But that is something that John Cage did. But what he is actually the most famous for probably is one particular composition called 433. And this composition was 4 minutes and 33 seconds long, exactly. And in those 4 minutes and 33 seconds, a whole orchestra would be sitting on stage, and they put their instruments up to play. And when the conductor told them to start, they all put their instruments down. And they don't do anything. They don't play. They don't make a sound. They just sit there for 4 minutes and 33 seconds. And actually, the first time that John Cage had an orchestra perform this piece, when he premiered it, the audience was very, very confused because they were used to, oh, we're going to go see John Cage. We're going to hear this really out there, really cool avant-garde music. And these people went to his premiere of a brand new piece called 433, and they had no idea what it was going to be, but they show up and nobody's playing anything. John Cage is just conducting like nothing's wrong, nothing's weird. And all the instruments are instrumentalists, all the performers are just sitting there, silent, just focused on their music, focused on him, and didn't make a sound. And eventually this crowd got really actually annoyed, the people that came and had tickets to his premiere, and they weren't getting to hear any music, they thought. So eventually people started booing and making a lot of noise, yelling out. Some people even left the theater. But they didn't get what 433 was because John Cage didn't explain it to them ahead of time. What 433 is 4 minutes and 33 seconds of music, but not what what a lot of people generally describe as music. When I ask you to describe music, you might say something on the radio, something with lyrics, something with instruments. And when John Cage was saying sitting here in silence was music, people were very confused. But what the point of the piece was to appreciate the sounds of the world around you. Because when you sit and you stop talking and no one's making intentional sound, you get to actually hear your world. And John Cage was trying to say that is music. That is a type of music because it is an amalgamation of what makes our world a little special. And it's going to be different no matter where you perform it, where you see it. So if I'm sitting right here, I'm sitting in my house and I've got a window open, so I can kind of hear cars going down a few roads away that's pretty busy. I can hear a plane going overhead. I've got my cat on my lap, so I hear her snoring. And essentially John Cage was saying that that's music. That is a type of music because those are all the sounds of your world. They are sound and they are doing something special. Whether or not everyone agrees that that's music is really, really up for debate. Some people say that is definitely not music. Music has to be organized. Or that's definitely not music. Music has to have instruments. There are so many arguments, and people still don't agree on whether 433 was a piece of music or something more like performance art. But I think it's a pretty cool thing. Whether or not I think it's music, I don't know. Do you think it's music? But whether or not we think it's music, it is really cool to just stop and listen and hear kind of the magic of the world going on around you. What I want to try right now is imagining we were at a performance of 433 right here in your classroom, in your bedroom, wherever you are. But we're not gonna sit in silence for 4 minutes, I promise. I want us to do 30 seconds. Let's do 33 seconds, and we'll call it 33. And we'll do 33 seconds of not making any sounds ourselves. So you're gonna sit as still as you can. You're not gonna fidget. You're not gonna cough or sneeze if you can help it. And just listen to what's going on around you. Will you hear cars on the road outside? Will you hear students in the next classroom? Will you hear someone walking outside the hall? What will you hear in the next 33 seconds of silence? I want us to close our eyes. Everyone have your eyes closed and just be as silent as you can and listen for the next 33 seconds. Ready? I'm setting a timer on my phone. Let's just close our eyes and take a listen. Ooh, that scared me. I was really into it, listening to my 33 seconds. What did you hear? Was there anything you heard that maybe you don't normally hear or don't notice that you hear about your environment in your classroom? I know I said earlier that I heard some car traffic, but when I closed my eyes and really was intentional about listening to that sound around me, I heard a bird chirping in the tree right outside my window. I heard my dog's feet tippy tapping around in the house. What did you hear that was maybe something you haven't necessarily paid attention to before? And while you're thinking of that, I want to show you what we're going to do next today. I want us to attend, we just did a 33-second practice, but I want today to do our own performance of 433. So we're going to actually do sitting there and listening for 4 minutes and 33 seconds, but I want to do something to kind of record our performance of it. And to do that, we're going to do something called creating a sound map. And a sound map is basically going to tell us about what that 433 sounded to each one of us. Because it might sound different to me. I might hear different things than the person next to me. We're all going to experience it differently. But having these sound maps will keep a record of our performance of 433. So I created a sound map earlier today when I was just sitting around and it was nice and quiet in my house. And this is what my sound map looked like. It definitely doesn't look like what you think of when you think of sheet music, do you? If I were to give you piano music next to this definitely looks way different. But let me tell you a little bit about my sound map here. So what I did was I drew myself in the middle. That's me. And then I drew symbols and pictures to represent all the sounds that I was hearing. I heard, you can see down here, I heard a plane or a helicopter. I couldn't really tell what it was, which one it was, but I heard probably a helicopter because it was actually pretty loud for a while. But I heard a helicopter, so I drew some helicopter blades moving around. But then it didn't stick in one place the whole time. Over the course of those 4 minutes, about 4.5 minutes, it moved around. Sometimes it sounded like it was behind me and to the left, sometimes it was behind me and to the right. So I kind of drew this pattern that is almost definitely not the pattern that it flew around in, but it was just showing that there was this helicopter blade sound, that whirring of the blades, and it had moved around behind me. Behind me, yeah. It looks like I'm facing this way in my picture, but that is just me going really fast because you can't draw all this magnificently in 4.5 minutes. So don't giggle too hard at my drawing. We'll see how yours goes. So we had some helicopter blades. I heard here, this is one of my dogs. He makes a lot of noise. He was sleeping, but he makes a lot of noise in his sleep because he's very old. So he had, at one point he had scratched himself while he was sleeping. So I drew these little slashy marks because I don't know that's how I wanted to represent the sound of him just going for a few seconds. But then at one point, he also, towards the end, he was going a little bit, and it sounded really like a wet, gooey sound. So I drew some water droplets in there. But he was sleeping, and I knew it was a dog because I knew my dog was right next to me. So I did draw a dog, but also had all these symbols around for the sounds he made. This one over here, any guesses what this sound might have been that I heard? This sound was actually, I heard a police siren go by in the distance outside. Not like right by my house, but probably several streets over. There is a police station nearby, so I hear them quite a bit. But I heard a police siren go by and that woo, 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 and then it's kind of faded out into the distance, but I heard it. Let's see what else there was. Ooh, any guesses what this was? I think, in my mind, I think this is a great representation of the wind blowing through the leaves and the trees outside. And this was to my side. I had another window open earlier today, so I could hear it, and it was actually in front of me to my side, where this stuff was kind of I heard this out the window behind me, and this was the window in front of me that I heard that out of. Let's see what else. Oh, this was my cat. She was right next to me. And after a few minutes of ignoring her, she started meowing quite loud. So she's got I've got kind of a blank cat head, but then these big lines off of because she was meowing loudly. I've got my other dog was over here. She was sleeping, but then something woke her up. She barked a couple times and then jumped out of bed and walked out of the room. And this is the tippy tapping sound of her little toes out or moving around the house. And then you probably can't see it, but I did it in yellow up here. Shouldn't have done it in that color, but these little wavy lines. And that was just because there was a background, like low background sound of, we have a dehumidifier in the house, and I could hear that had turned on and just had that constant sound really low that I usually don't notice. So, and I usually don't notice the wind in the trees, and I've gotten very used to my loud sleeping dog. So I don't really think about these noises until I stop and intentionally think about them. So that's something that's really cool about this. What you're going to do is you're going to create your own sound map while we do some listening. And your sound map can look like mine or completely different from mine. Just remember, you're only going to have about 4.5 minutes to do it. So I did a combination of actual pictures and just picture representations, kind of abstract stuff. You can do one or the other or a combination of both like I did. You could do neither one and come up with your own way to picture the sounds around you, but you're going to come up with your own sound map. So the project we're doing today, you are going to go, your teacher, it's up to them. They can decide if you want to do it in the classroom or if it's coming close to your recess time or dismissal, you can go out early and or save this till recess time and do it outside. Every different environment is going to sound a little different, but you're going to, if you're doing it in your classroom, you're going to sit and either your teacher or a really responsible timekeeper that might have a watch or on their computer is going to set the timer for 4 minutes and 33 seconds. And then everyone's going to be as silent as they can and listen around them while drawing out the sound map. Drawing, you might hear if you have an air filter in the classroom, or sometimes I know sometimes my computer cord makes a little buzzy sound. So if anyone's plugged in and charging something, you might hear something like that. And draw out all of the representations of the sounds around us. And then you'll have these different maps of our performance. And then last, once you've done that, I want y'all to share with a partner, share with a small group what yours looks like. Turn to your neighbor and see if you can discuss like, oh, I heard that same sound, or I heard this. Did you hear it? No, I didn't hear that. So maybe you might have heard different sounds from your neighbor, sometimes the same sounds. Maybe you heard the same sounds, but you drew them really differently. And kind of compare your sound map to your neighbors, because I'm willing to bet that no two people in your class are going to have the same exact sound map. They can have the same exact sounds, but they're probably not going to draw them exactly the same. So we're going to create sound maps, listening for 4 minutes, 33 seconds. You can do it in just pencil. I had colored pens, so I did it in colored pens, but whatever you have in your space, pens, pencils, paper, all those things, colored pencils, or just a pencil is fine. And then when everyone's done, once the timekeeper says 4 minutes and 33 seconds are up, do some form of organized turn and share with your partner, or even as a class raising hands and sharing our different maps. And that is going to be our music today. So I hope you enjoy, and maybe this is a reminder to when you enter different environments, maybe when you get home today or you're just laying in your bedroom at night, just close your eyes for a minute and listen and see what you're hearing. And maybe it's the music of your world, your life. With that, I will see you next time, and have a lovely rest of your week.